Hello everyone, I got a couple of games of Warhammer the Old World in last week, and I wanted to do a video just talking about the 4 games I played and my thoughts on the game so far. So without further ado, let's get started and talk about the battle reports. My first game was a 3-way free-for-all. We have Bretonnians, Beastmen, and Warriors of Chaos. Give a quick overview of each of the armies here. The Warriors of Chaos player took 3 units of Chaos Warriors. 2 of them on the far right side, kind of going off against the Beastman player, have additional hand weapons. The slightly larger unit that has 11 that's going up against me actually only has 10. He has a Chaos Lord inside there. And that unit also has hand weapon shield. There are 3 Chaos Trolls. They're in front of a Chimera. I don't think he had too much in terms of upgrades, and I don't have the lists in front of me, so you'll have to forgive me on that. I can go over my list, and I do know the upgrades on my side. I have 3 Pegasus Knights, a Paladin BSB, who is mounted on a Warhorse. He's going to be inside of the Knights of the Realm unit there. Speaking of which, we have, I believe, 8 Knights of the Realm. I took a Champion, a Banner, and that's about it. And then the very last thing I took was, I believe, 18 Bretonnian Bowmen. I gave them a Champion, and I gave them defensive stakes as well. I had a nice hill for my side of the battlefield. We did roll for table sides and all that, so I liked that hill because it gave the archers an extra rank to shoot from. But before I start getting into the game, let's go over the last army here. The Beastmen in the opposite corner there pretty much took as many Minotaurs as possible in a list. He's got 1 unit of 3 Minotaurs with additional hand weapons, another unit in the middle of 3 that have great weapons. I believe he has a Doom Bowl leading the unit. The Doom Bowl and additional hand weapon unit are going to kind of go towards the Chaos Warrior side of the battlefield. And I don't play Beastmen, you'll have to forgive me on this. I think he had 20 Ungors, and they had like short bows or something like that. And then the very last thing he had was a Brayherd Shaman, I believe is what they're called, and it was a level 2 wizard. I don't remember one of the spells it had, but the other spell that I do remember was Flock of Doom. The objective for this battle was we put a Conan the Barbarian miniature in the middle of the battlefield, like the dead middle, kind of in that little marshland area. You can see the road leading towards. He has captured a damsel, and if anyone can rescue the damsel and defeat Conan, they'll get 200 points for defeating Conan and 200 points for holding on to the damsel at the very end of the game. The Conan mini there is basically a Chaos Champion, or whatever the lesser hero, like the cheapest hero version of a Chaos Champion is. He is that profile with light armor, 6-up ward save, and he has a great weapon. That's about it for the battlefield, objectives, and the armies. The turn order is Beastmen with the first turn, Chaos Warriors with the second turn, and because the Bretonnians have to pray before the battle, I will have the last turn. The game basically goes as follows. The Beastman player's Minotaurs are going to blitz forward with the Doom Bowl and engage with 2 of the Chaos Warrior units. I know he gets the charge on at least one of the Warrior units, and the second one might get the charge on one of the Minotaur units, but long story short, they're going to get whittled down over the course of the entire game. Minotaurs will lose 1, and they'll take a couple of wounds. Doom Bowl will get chipped, but yeah, 20 Chaos Warriors will get chopped down over the course of this battle. Something I did forget to mention is we put a 4-turn limit just to keep the game a little bit brief. We figured we're going to have to be reading and learning a lot of rules with this first game, so we didn't want it to drag on too long. The remainder of the Beastman's forces are going to start heading towards me. And what that is going to be is like the 20 Ungors. He has some kind of proxy unit in front by the side of them. It might be like Bestigors or something like that. I really can't remember. And they will be accompanied by the Great Weapon unit of Minotaurs. After he gets about halfway towards me, though, he diverts right towards the objective and will clash with the Chaos Warriors Chimera. I am going to have my Knights, the Pegasus, and the Hippogriff all kind of divert towards the Warrior of Chaos side. So he's really getting sandwiched in. and I kind of broke the code of honor in the three-way free-for-all. You're supposed to kind of diverge your forces towards each of the players to be a little bit fair. But I saw the Beastman line approaching me, and I didn't really think, oh, he's going to just go towards the objective, not really towards me, and I got scared and just had all my stuff flee towards the Warriors of Chaos. The good news is, my combats go pretty well. So I have the Knights of the Realm with the Paladin inside of there, charge into that Chaos Warrior unit with the Lord that has the hand weapon shield on the far left side of the picture there. That combat will go for about 3 turns because you can't just break a unit now unless they roll really bad on their leadership. Instead, what seems to happen is a lot of times they're going to just keep giving ground and you'll keep getting your charge advantage and stuff, unless, like, the rolls really don't go in your favor or the combat goes really bad. He'll chip down my Knights of the Realm to pretty much just the hero and champion near the end of this game before I finish him off, but yeah, it's a good little combat. The trolls will have to duke it out with my Bretonnian Lord on the Hippogriff. I should have mentioned his equipment. He has the Heroic Killing Blow Vow, he has a shield, heavy armor, and I might have given him the Glittering Helm if I had enough points. I can't really recall. The Chaos Warriors Chimera is going to make a dash towards Conan, and Conan holds on pretty strong, manages to tank all the attacks from the Chimera, only taking 1 wound, and I think he deals 1 or 2 wounds back in retaliation. Only problem is he gets thunderstomped afterwards, and yeah, the Chimera snatches up the damsel of all things. Yeah, I guess it's riding on the Chimera's back or something. I don't know. But it won't be able to hold on to that damsel for long because the Minotaurs have the Chimera in sight, and those Minotaurs also have great weapons. I believe the Chimera is going to accept the fight, and it's going to get chopped down. Might be able to take out 1 or 2 of the Minotaurs with it, but yeah, the great weapons are going to be a little bit too much for that Chimera. My Lord with the Vow of Heroic Killing Blow will just slaughter those trolls. The Pegasus Knights are going to kind of help out a little bit with the Knights of the Realm dealing with that Warriors of Chaos unit. My archers pretty much just stand their ground the whole game. I gave them defensive stakes. I put them on a hill. I'm like, no, they're not moving. They're staying there. And they just kept plucking away at beastmen the whole game until the inevitable happened and they got closed in on and slaughtered. And that pretty much sums up our first battle of Warhammer the Old World. I think I got a Flock of Doom from the Bray Herd Shaman over there, and that killed a couple of my archers, but most of the magic was kind of focused on the Chaos player, the Warrior of Chaos player. And yeah, we'll move on to the next battle. Like I said, had 4 battles that happened this weekend. I kind of just want to talk about each of them, so I know I'm going to want to take some time at the end of this to go over all of my thoughts on the game so far. And everyone we played with had a lot of thoughts and opinions on the game so far. I know it's going to take like 30 minutes. So, try to keep these as brief as possible. Game 2 of the Old World. I kept my list for the most part. I think the only thing I did was add a prophetess or a damsel of Bretonnia. I want to say it was a damsel and she was only level 2. I know I had the fireball spell and I had it's like called something hammer, convergence of hammer. I was taking lore of battle. It allows your wizard when it's in combat, it's like an assailment spell, to deal some damage. So those are my 2 spells, and I have, like I said, the Knights of the Realm. I have the little Paladin in there. I took my Lord on the mount, some Pegasus Knights, and the Peasant Bowmen. My opponent decided to change things up a little bit. He took a bigger unit of Warriors of Chaos. He took 2 units of Marauders. Each one, I believe, has flails and possibly Mark of Corn. And he took a Demon Prince. That was the very big addition to this list. And another unit of Chaos Warriors you can see in the photo there. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. But yeah, he has a Demon Prince now, and I think it has a 5-up regen save, a 2-up normal armor save. He might have given it some equipment, but yeah, it has a 2-up armor save, 5-up regen save, and a 4-up ward save. That thing is nasty. The only hope I have is my Bretonnian Lord that I mentioned has that Vow of Heroism. He's like the only guy in my army that's going to be able to deal with that thing, most likely. or so I will think. I'll kind of talk about that later in the battle report. The very last thing to make note of my Chaos opponent here, he does have that Lord inside that unit there again. I really can't recall what his gear was, but I know he does have a Lord, and he has the Chaos Demon in this army. I think we had 1,500 points for this game. So, moving on to the battlefield, I think we rolled for table sides, and my opponent picked that one, and I got this side. Really not too much, just a couple of little fences. We had like one hill, and fairly open field of combat. I'm going to put most of my units on the right side of the board and kind of force him into a choke point since he has the number advantage. I'm hoping my archers will be able to pick off one or two of those marauder units. Maybe my flyers will be able to launch out and pick off another additional unit or two and even out the numbers for when I gotta deal with those Chaos Warriors and the Demon Prince eventually. He moves up. He has the trolls kind of leading the charge for the most part. He'll eventually hide his Demon Prince behind that chapel, so I'm unable to charge him. The Marauders are going to go towards that fence line and my archers, and I think one of the units will actually just get deleted from archer fire. Not something that happens immediately. It'll happen over the course of 3 or 4 turns of concentrated fire. My Pegasus Knights are going to charge one of the other units of Marauders and finish them off rather quickly. And the Knights of the Realm are basically just going to stall and delay for as long as possible. What'll happen is the Trolls will eventually get into a favorable position for my Lord and the Knights to both charge in, but I think due to spacing, my opponent said I can only get one of the units in, and it happened to be the Knights of the Realm. I'll charge them in, manage to finish off those Trolls, and reposition. I might not necessarily finish him off. I think he might actually just get a really bad leadership roll, and they run through his own units, and I just choose to do a reform. But yeah, those trolls up in the front there are going to get deleted. Again, I might have gotten my Bretonnian Lord actually into that combat, and then just had him fly back. Really can't remember. But after that's dealt with, he's going to start setting up the Chaos Warriors. The only problem is, as I mentioned, those Pegasus Knights are going to charge off onto the side. And what'll happen is they are going to be free for when that combat's about to happen. My Knights of the Realm are going to charge into the thinner unit of Chaos Warriors, and the Pegasus Knights, now that they're going to be free of any units nearby, are going to charge into the flank of his bigger unit of Chaos Warriors. The Demon Prince decided to abandon his position behind that chapel and fly behind my Knights of the Realm. Kind of hilariously, I just told my opponent, like, and I think it actually was a good move, but I was like, this is just too funny, I gotta do it. I put my Bretonnian Lord behind his Demon Prince, basically being like, yep, I'm right on your ass, and I'm gonna take you out, and I just imagine them kind of flying, like, behind each other, he's right on his tail, and yeah, that's my plan. His Demon Prince will charge into the rear of my Knights of the Realm unit, but we will talk about that in a second. What'll happen first is my unit will charge into that thin line of Chaos Warriors, but as I mentioned, I still just couldn't really comprehend how combat res was going to be working in this game. He doesn't run. Instead, he just backs up a bit, and I continue to charge him, and the same thing's happening with the Pegasus Knights. So these combats are like going to keep playing out whether I like it or not, and that means his Demon Prince is going to be able to get the charge into the rear of my unit when it's his turn. Yes, my Bretonnian Lord will be able to do a counter charge, but that's not until it's my turn. So yeah, what happens is the Demon Prince charges in. He just doesn't really have the best AP on his attacks, and I think he kills 1 or 2 of my Knights. I don't really deal any wounds to him, but I'm in combat with those Chaos Warriors as well. Managed to pick off a couple more of them. Maybe I do get 1 wound back at the Demon Prince. I'm not really sure, but what I do know is I have the BSB in that unit for combat res. I have a normal banner. I have a vow that gives me an additional +1, and I just won the combat by a considerable amount, even with his rear charge on me. And the long story short, Demon Princes crumble now, apparently. They're like unstable spawns or something. I don't play Chaos. I have the rule book, but just don't have it in front of me. So, however much he loses by, he takes that many wounds, and the Demon Prince pretty much just crumbles right then and there. We were talking about it, even if it didn't happen, you know, the fact that I didn't run in that combat meant my Lord was just going to get the charge on the Demon Prince, and that probably would have been that anyways, but that sums up my second game. I lost the first one, but we managed to claim a victory against Chaos in the second battle. Moving on to the third battle report. And unfortunately, I don't really have pictures for this one, so you're gonna just have to kind of listen to my narrations and some filler images here for my third and fourth game of Warhammer the Old World. My third battle was against the Tomb Kings. My opponent took, I think, 3 units of like 20 Tomb King archers, and they were in a very long line. I do think they were in a line of 2, just because he didn't know at the time you only get to shoot with 1 rank. They do have the volley fire rule, so you get to shoot with like half of the back rank or something, but yeah, he did mention he just didn't really like that too much, and I'm not too crazy about that rule either. I kind of get it, because like there's no step up, or sorry, there's not no step up. There's no supporting attacks anymore in Melee. The game's much more centered around just front ranks doing stuff, but I don't know. For ease of play and just like aesthetics, I'm not really a huge fan of that rule, but we'll talk about that later. He took 3 units of 20 skeleton bowmen. They have those like asp arrows that always hit you on a 5+ or something. They don't care about modifiers. They're really annoying. He had 2 Ushapti bowmen. They can take a melee loadout or like a great bow loadout, and he decided to take the great bows, which I don't blame him. I'm taking like tons of Pegasus Knights and my Lord. I haven't changed my list for any of these games, really. I've just added if my opponent wants more points. So he knew I was going to have some big monsters, and that's definitely not a bad unit for it. In addition to that, he took a Bone Giant. I don't think this was like the most competitive thing to take in the world, but one of our other buddies that was over for the weekend was like, take the Bone Giant, take the Bone Giant. And I mean, he hasn't even taken it yet, so why not? Took a Bone Giant, had a big unit of Tomb Guard. I want to say about 20 Tomb Guard, and he had a Lich Priest, or whatever the character is that leads the Tomb Kings, embedded in that unit. I don't recall too much of his magical loadout or anything, or necessarily too many of his spells, so you will have to forgive me for that. I did not take the Damsel this time around. I believe we went back down to 1250 instead of 1500 for this game. I just had the Paladin BSB, I had the little Lord on the Hippogriff, the Pegasus Knights, and the Knights of the Realm. And I did take the Bowmen again, just because I wasn't really changing my list up too much. Again, since I don't have actual documented photos or videos of this battle, I just want to be a little quick on my summary of how this game went. My Pegasus Knights and the Lord on the Hippogriff are going to blitz up the right side of the board towards his concentration of archers with the Bone Giant. They're going to take a wound or 2 from shooting attacks as they cross the board. Something I did forget to mention is my Lord took a potion of healing, and this is probably going to be the first game he's actually going to use it, so I just want to mention that now. They're going to fly across the board, and my Knights of the Realm are going to kind of join up with them. The archers are going to just try to delay and pick off as whatever unit they can possible. Mostly the Tomb Guard, even though they have like a ward save. It's really the only target I had this game. And yeah, my Lord is going to charge into the Bone Giant and just one-shot it with his heroic killing blow capabilities. Tragic, I know, but it had to be done. The Pegasus Knights are going to charge into one of the big archer blocks. My Knights of the Realm are going to charge into the other archer block. I might take one casualty in terms of a Pegasus Knight and a Knight of the Realm along the way, but they are going to all get killed. And something that I forgot to mention my opponent also took was 2 of, they're called like Tomb Scorpions or something. They have like a killing blow ability. They burrow underground and they pop up. They will not reveal themselves till a little later in the battle. That's also why I kind of forgot about them. But yeah, we're going to peel into these archer units, delete those. His Ushapti bowmen are going to just keep shooting at me, eventually kill one of the Pegasus Knights. I think I'm down to 2 about halfway through this game. The Tomb Guard with the Lich Priest are kind of on the wrong side of the battle, and this is all happening really quick. And they're going to shift from the left side of the battle over to my side and just get peppered by archers, but really the archers aren't doing too much. Maybe I kill a couple of them. the Lich Priest just resurrects most of them along the way. I think he even took like a magic banner to prevent range damage or something like that. Anyways, one of the Tomb Scorpions is going to pop up, charge into the flank of my Knight unit before it's able to reposition and make contact with his Tomb Guard. And it'll get a kill. It gets a nice little kill, but I deal a wound or two back, and as I mentioned, I have like a BSB with like a Vow, and I have a good amount of stuff helping me in combat res, and the thing basically ends up crumbling in a turn of like charging into me. The other one won't reveal itself until a little bit later. The Tomb Guard are going to eventually get into position. And by that I mean they're going to get within charge range of my Pegasus Knights, my Knights of the Realm unit, and my Lord on the Hippogriff. When that happens, I decide to charge the Lord and the Pegasus, the Lord and the Knights of the Realm in. The Pegasus Knights get caught up. One of the Tomb Scorpions pops up on the far flank of the board and is going to charge into them, and I had to make a tough decision. Do I flee and lose my Vow, or do I stay and fight and probably lose this combat? I decided to be a bit cowardly and flee. He decides to pursue, and it's a shame because he got an awesome roll, and if it was a far charge if he decided to do a redirect into my Knights and the Lord charging into the Tomb Guard. If he did that redirect, he actually would have made it, but I can totally understand why he didn't. From a statistical standpoint, he definitely should have just pursued the Pegasus, but the Dice Gods kind of spat in his face and said no. I think he does finish off that unit, but the Tomb Scorpion's going to be far away now and unfortunately unable to help the Lich Priest who is fighting for his life. That unit's going to crumble over about 2 rounds of combat, and it'll be a victory for the Bretonnians. For my final battle, I swapped things up a little bit. Decided to play my vampire counts. When I was a kid, I used to love taking as many zombies as possible in an army. And I actually did make an error when I was making my list. I didn't realize minimum unit size for zombies was 20. I took a couple of units of like 10 and 15 just because when I was looking at most of the units across the board, it seemed like 10 was the minimum. Like, it's sometimes 5, but 10 was the minimum across the board. And it surprised me when a couple of days ago after the game, I was looking through the rules and I was like, oh crap, it was 20. So, made a little bit of a mistake there, but yeah, I took like 3 or 4 units of zombies, I took a Banshee, I took 10 ghouls, I took a level 2 Necromancer, I took pretty much, this is most of my points in the army, I took a Vampire Count on a Dragon, I made him level 2, I upgraded him to be level 3, I gave him like some fancy armor, I can't remember, it was like one of the vampire armor things I think, and a lance and shield. The final thing I took was some Black Knights, I think about 6, maybe 8 of them, and I gave them like a banner and a champion, and 5 direwolves. That's my entire army. My opponent was the Empire player from the Kaiju League, if you've been following that, and he took most of the models that he had available for that in his Game of the Old World here. He's got a big block of 20 or so halberdiers. He took the Warrior Priest, put that in there. I don't think he has the Witch Hunter Captain, but he might have that in there as well. I know he took the Empire General and gave him this new dragon hunting bow that's in the Empire rulebook. I think it's really good, like, for the points, in my opinion. He's going to put them in, he's going to put the General in his handgunner unit on, like, the further side of the board here. He's also going to have a crossbow unit over there. He's going to have the steam tank over there. He's going to have, I think, 20 or 15 Free Company militia and 5 outriders. And I believe that's about it for what my Empire opponent had. He might have had a detachment of 10 halberdiers as well. Cannot recall. But this game is going to be me basically setting up a giant wave of zombies and ghouls and a Banshee kind of hidden amongst their ranks, straight up the middle of the board, trying to distract him as much as possible. And then my direwolves, the Black Knights, and the Vampire Count on the Dragon, all my faster units are going to be on the further left side of the board, trying to blitz up and just kill as much stuff as possible and eventually kind of rally with that zombie horde that's hopefully clogging up the main line. His Free Company militia are going to move up and challenge that zombie horde. They're going to get completely enveloped and devoured over the course of like 4 turns. It takes a long time, but it's very fun to watch. My hounds are actually going to be able to catch the outriders, and I think my vampire count on the dragons also going to join into that combat there. The Black Knights are just constantly lagging behind these two the entire game. My Vampire Lord's also going to be like summoning new little zombie units all over the place. I'm going to put one in front of his Halberdier unit to stall them up. I'm going to spawn some over behind the Free Company to charge from like every single direction. I actually kind of like forget about it because like it's not something you need to dedicate dice towards anymore. Now like you just automatically basically roll for all your spells. So if anything, I probably could have gotten more zombies out of this game, but I was a little bit unfamiliar with all the new rules, you could say. But yeah, we're basically going to just keep charging up. He's going to delete basically a whole unit of zombies. His firepower is not concentrated on one unit, so like he'll delete 8 zombies here and then like 5 or 6 in this unit here. And that's why I say by like the end of the game, he'll delete like one whole unit just from his range attacks. His steam tank has like this pigeon bomb thing that was absolutely hilarious, but unfortunately I don't think it landed over the course of the entire battle. He kept dropping duds on people's heads, which would like kill one zombie, or the pigeon would just fly back home and probably blow up some poor Empire peasant's house. So yeah, not the greatest performance from the pigeon bombs, but the steam tank itself is able to melt a good amount of my zombies. The 6-up regen saves pretty nice though. I don't think the steam tank counts as having flaming attacks, and I don't think the zombies are flammable, so yeah, that's really going to save me quite a few wounds throughout this game. I definitely noticed it. And after a little bit of chipping down at the Free Company, the Outriders are killed off. I'm able to get my Lord, the Hounds, and his detachment unit in front of his big block of Halberdiers, finish off the detachment, charge into the main block. I get like a couple of conjured up zombie units involved. That unit's finished off, the militia's finished off, and he's kind of just left with his shooting units at the very end. And it'll be a victory for the vampire counts. All in all, not too bad a performance for my first couple of games in Warhammer the Old World. I lost that first one against the Beastmen and the Warriors of Chaos. I did manage to beat the Warriors of Chaos in that second game rematch. Also managed to beat the Tomb Kings in my third game using Bretonnians. And I even got my vampire counts on for the final game against the Empire, and I got my third victory. And I also just want to preface, if I didn't already earlier in the video, this was the first weekend of not just myself, but I think we had 3 or 4 other people playing these games here. All of us are brand new to Warhammer the Old World. Some of us have watched videos, some of us have been reading all of the articles that Games Workshop's been dropping on us, and varying levels of experience so far, but I think it's fair to say, all pretty much for the most part newcomers to the game here. So I am sure that we got some rules wrong. One thing I can tell you right off the bat is I didn't know that Pegasus Knights charge in lance formation. That's something brand new to me. And honestly, it seems like a pretty strong thing to be using on them, so I'm going to, remember that for my next game. And yeah, there's just a lot of little stuff like that I'm sure happened throughout these battles and will maybe change my opinion on the game as it goes forward. So I'm even taking my own words here with a grain of salt, and that's future Cam trying to come in here with some sage wisdom to past Cam. But yeah, I'd like to give my thoughts on the game so far, barring all the rule errors and such that we made over these battles. Overall, pretty positive. I like the game a lot. And yeah, let's start with the positives. Cavalry and monsters feel much stronger, at least compared to 8th edition Warhammer, which is what I've been playing for the most part for like the past 10 years or something like that. What I mean by that is when you charged in 6th edition and 7th edition, there was more impact in the charge, which helped your cavalry because cavalry is a fast-moving unit. Typically, it's going to be a charging unit. So that kind of helped, and some of the changes that were made in this edition really supports cavalry making their charge. Just to give an example, a lot of the Bretonnians have a rule where if they charge a certain distance, they get an increase to their initiative for the distance traveled. So that increases my initiative on the charge, and unless you have always strikes first, that's going to matter quite a bit. It's also going to matter quite a bit in an edition where units don't step up from the back rank. So me swinging first and cleaving down your whole front rank is a lot bigger of a deal than it was in 8th edition, for example. Same thing kind of applies to monsters. I think monsters are just a lot stronger across the board, especially putting characters on monsters. The way that monsters boost your character's stats in this edition is so much stronger than it really has been, in my opinion, in any edition of Warhammer. The monsters themselves are just a lot better off too, because cannons deal a lot less damage, and yeah, I just think they have a lot more survivability. A lot of the creatures that used to be relying on regen but were flammable aren't flammable anymore. Some of them still are, but yeah, there's just like a lot of little tweaks and stuff like that I really think help monsters out quite a bit. I will say the game does have more heroic killing blow than ever to kind of balance that out a little bit. How effective that's going to be will be determined throughout the next year or so, or however long I end up playing Warhammer the Old World. Hopefully a lot longer. As a Bretonnian player, it feels great to have them back at the forefront of Warhammer. Yeah, I mean, a little bit of a biased thing to put on my list here, but I mean, I've been playing Bretonnians for so long, man, and like, we haven't had any new units and just been dragging along for so long. It really feels good to play a version of Warhammer where it's like the forefront faction, number one, but number two, there's just new units now and new options for how you want to play your characters. I will say some stuff got taken away, like some of the magic equipment and stuff you used to have access to is the main thing I'm thinking of, a couple of the vows as well, but yeah, it's just nice to play Bretonnians and like have some new stuff to play around with and some what I would call past sins being righted. Just as an example, like Bretonnian Pegasus, like knights, the actual model, always had barding like on the actual model, but for whatever reason, Games Workshop never gave them that rule, and now they finally have it, and it just feels so good to see that in the rulebook again. I just absolutely love that. Having Bretonnians coming back in full glory feels great. The new AP system and armor system kind of coinciding with it, I was a little bit iffy about it at first just because it seemed like a copy and paste from like a lot of the stuff in Warhammer 40k. I haven't played in a little while, so I could be completely off with how 10th edition I think 40k plays now, but yeah, I just kind of felt like it was taking like weapon APs and stuff from when I used to play 40k and putting it into fantasy, but to be honest, I kind of like it. It gives certain weapons a little bit more flavor, like it's not the person that's like punching through the armor, it's the weapon that they're using, and I think that's really cool and something that has balanced out some of the weapons that like already existed in the game a little bit more. I would like to see this kind of gone a little bit further with some of the new rule books and stuff that they release, you know, like daggers that have like AP3 or like it has like the 6-up armor pierce thing, like it has that on like level 3. If you get super lucky stab with the dagger, it'll just like ignore 3 armor or something like that. I think all that stuff's really, really cool. I like longbows, just like having a 6 on a 6 to wound, like you can just punch through some armor and get a -1 on that. All that stuff's really cool. And when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this is going to kind of slow down the game, having like a kind of crit table thing like you do in Mordheim. But no, it really doesn't slow down the game that much. It's more just you got to make sure you're on top of it and remembering this stuff when you roll the dice. So, yeah, I like the AP system. The armor getting kind of reduced across the board makes sense, coinciding with this AP system. I didn't put this in my not sure category, but like I will say, like once you start getting to that 3-up and 2-up armor save, it becomes really hard to like actually get it reduced heavily. it seems like a lot of times the best you'll get it to is like a 50-50. They did make it so you can't get a 1-up save anymore, so again, this might be there to kind of balance it all out, and they were like, alright, like, let people get to that 50-50 or a 1 out of 3 with a 5-up save. That's all fine. But I'm just kind of mentioning it now because, like, it does seem like that AP3 weapon or AP4 stuff, like, isn't quite there as much as it used to be in older editions of Warhammer. But yeah, I thought I was going to be a little bit skeptical of the strength not reducing armor, but overall I kind of liked it, and it feels pretty fun to play with. A lot of the rebalancing across the board I just really like. My opponent in the first game I played, Beastman player, like, this is an army that has always struggled. I know in a lot of tier lists people put like Tomb Kings, Bretonnians, and Beastmen at the bottom. Beastmen might be the weakest of the weakest when it came to like older editions of Warhammer. They just like were always such a struggle, and it was kind of a shame, and it was really cool to see them on the battlefield and like actually tearing stuff up. They have some stuff that lets them like take a little bit of strong army options, I'll say. Like, oh, if you have a Doom Bull, you can take a Minotaur unit and have it count as core, and it's like, alright, well, when you do that, like, that's pretty much his whole core percentage right there in a lot of lists. Like, I don't know, there's some stuff that, like, I'm a little skeptical of, but overall I just really like seeing that army, like, actually being able to tear things up and not struggling so much, and I think a lot of factions are like that. Obviously, like, I'm playing Bretonnians, and I feel like things are pretty good for them, and they were a faction that used to struggle a lot. I had success in my local area playing Bretonnians. Like, I never felt like they were bottom tier, but, like, I look at the rules and stuff in this one, and I feel like they're pretty strong across the board when I compare them to other armies. And when I did that in 8th edition, I was taking their 6th edition book, comparing it to the 8th stuff, and pretty much other than my character gimmicks and loadouts, like, that's the only thing I had going for me. Other than that, it was always an uphill battle. I never understood why Grail Knights were weaker than Chaos Knights, stat-wise. These are supposed to be the best of the best in the old world when it came to, like, Knights, and it feels really good to see them actually have the same stat line as, like, their opponents there. Like, yes, they are actually that good. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that, rebalancing-wise. The Pegasus Barding thing I mentioned already, like, I am glad to see a lot of these changes for the most part across the board. I'm sure there's some that will be a little sketchy, and I'll be like, oh, that might be a little too cheesy or this or that, but from what I've seen so far, I like a lot of these changes and rebalancing that have occurred across the board in all the armies. This might be the most important out of all the positives I have to say about the game. It's that it feels like a proper new edition of Warhammer Fantasy. It doesn't feel like I'm playing some kind of modern day made Games Workshop product. And like, I've tried Kill Team, I tried the newer editions of 40k, like, I used to like those games, but I don't like their new rule sets. And I was really worried going into this game it was kind of going to be like that. Like, on the surface, it looks like Warhammer Fantasy, but like, it really doesn't play like that. And when I read through all the rules, I saw the rule books themselves, and I got my games in, like, it felt like I was playing a new edition of Warhammer Fantasy. And I really like that. I'd say it's honestly the biggest positive I have to say about this game. Yes, it feels like a little bit of a mishmash of different stuff throughout Warhammer's history, but it really does feel like I'm playing something that's proper Warhammer, and I like that a lot. And that actually kind of leads into my next thing. It has given me a lot of nostalgia for 6th edition Warhammer, which I actually really haven't played in a while. Most of the time I'm playing my older 6th edition armies and rule books in 8th edition, not with 6th edition rules, fighting 6th edition armies. So it gave me a lot of nostalgia not having like that step up, and like, I don't know, your characters kind of mattering a little bit more in units, and I really like dig that stuff, and I know people really like 6th edition, so it felt good to play that again. I'm definitely not a stranger to it. That's actually where I started playing Warhammer, and I've played hundreds of games of 6th edition Warhammer. I still have my 6th edition rulebook over there on my shelf, and I read through it every now and then. Yeah, it's an edition I like a lot, and it definitely has a special place in my heart. So it's really fun playing this one and like getting that sense of nostalgia again. And it's also really nice to see a lot of small additions that they made in 7th and 8th edition of Warhammer included in this. I know people like the consistency of 6th edition charging and like you can't pre-measure it and stuff, but I don't know, like as someone who used to play that edition back at Games Workshop, like actual stores, like there was always like this sense of like you could do the board math and kind of figure things out and you learn the table, and like I kind of felt like it was a little bit flawed at the end of the day. I still played Mordheim, which has no pre-measuring, and like I really enjoy that. Like I'm not trying to say I don't dig that system. It's totally fine. Like I don't know, after playing so much 8th edition, I kind of like the allowing of pre-measuring and like the 2d6 to the charge and stuff. Like the charges also have been kind of reduced as like a compromise, so like there is a little bit less randomness to it. Like I think it's just like an overall better compromise of taking the 6th edition stuff and using some of the new things that 7th and 8th brought into the game to make this new one. So overall, like I really like that, and I like that sense of nostalgia I've gotten from playing the game so far. The rule books are so much better quality than the War Scrolls that we were given for Age of Sigmar when it came out. I don't mean to throw a bunch of stones at Age of Sigmar. I know I like can do that every now and then, and I apologize. Like I'm not trying to make enemies or anything, but it's hard to argue. Like a lot of those were just like kind of jokes. Like the ogre one is like, all right, like if you can belch louder than your enemy, you get a reroll on this thing. Like, and it's like, all right, well, like, what does that mean, Games Workshop? Like, does that mean I'm supposed to roll a 50-50? Like, does it just mean I always get it? Like, do you actually want me to burp here? Like, I'm sorry, it just made me feel like the game was kind of a joke. And I played a good couple of games with some of my buddies throughout, like, the first edition of it, and I really didn't like what I got. And it just, like, yeah, it kind of felt like this rush thing, and I don't feel that way playing this game so far. Like, the quality of the books is awesome. Even the PDFs that armies have gotten, I love. Like, it, you know, I know they're not as good as, like, the ones in the actual books, but I played the Vampire Count one, and yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff missing that I would like to see. I would have loved if they brought Bloodlines back. I wasn't really expecting them to, but maybe we'll get that when they actually come out way later, like years from now. But yeah, like, I think the quality is there. It doesn't feel like a lot of the armies were just kind of slapped together. It feels like people kind of went through all the books and did some proper retooling of all the armies and kind of brought them to a pretty nice balanced state here. Again, I'm just starting out here, so I could easily be wrong on that like balanced state, but I do like the quality and the presentation of everything so far. I think it's great. The last thing I want to say is I was reading through the Bretonnian Arcane journals, and I saw they had like these custom brigand units and stuff you could take. It's like the Bretonnian Outcast or Border Prince armies. I can't remember exactly, but they had these units that had all these custom rules and stats, but there are no models for them. So what are you supposed to do? And they were kind of talking about like kit bashing and homebrewing the units, and that is all stuff from like old 6th edition and prior stuff of Warhammer, and I used to love that stuff so much. Just encouraging people to like do it yourself, be creative, make your own kind of things that like overall fit these archetypes and stuff for like each of the characters or each of the units, but like it's up to you how you want to present them, up to you what models you want to use to make them. Like that stuff is great, and I was so happy to see them like put some of that stuff in the game again. I don't really think 8th edition had much of that, so I hope to see more of it. Like, I can remember getting all the White Dwarfs and stuff back in the day, and they had like little homebrew unit things like that, and honestly, that's a big basis for the Halfling army that I have, and I've been like kind of talking about in some of my Kaiju League videos, and yeah, like that stuff is awesome, and it can just encourage people to make whole new factions and stuff for Warhammer. Like, keep that stuff up. Alright. So this is some of the stuff I'm not too sure about. As in, when I played my games, I felt like it had positive moments, it had negative moments. Maybe I just haven't had enough time to think about it. So it's kind of on the fence, these things that have occurred over the games I played. The first one I want to talk about is the army structure of the game. I think it's fun, and the armies that you can bring to the table, again, just bringing back that sense of nostalgia from 6th edition, are really cool. I love, like, Lizardmen, for example. I used to love taking Slann Mage Priests in all the lists I could, and I think it's really cool that now you can pretty much do that in most of your lists, unless it's, like, a really low point percentage. For me, like, as a Bretonnian player, I've been taking, like, my Lord on the Hippogriff, and I've been taking him in every game, not only because monsters are really strong, but because, like, he's easy to fit in. You can give him tons of cool stuff in, like, any point game, pretty much. So I really like that part about it, but I also think at the same time it's a little bit too open. It's like, you know, we are also encouraging with this system, like, people to take, like, those uber characters in literally every single list they make, and you can also sometimes take multiple of those things. There's also no unit limit per se. I know Games Workshop, like, kind of has, like, a tournament thing and a rule of 3 that got slapped in a little bit later on past the release. And yeah, I mean, we'll play with that and stuff. That's totally fine. But I just think the structure of everything might actually be a little bit too open at times. And like I mentioned with the Beastmen, it's like if you allow people to take a single Minotaur unit as a core, that is just going to eat up whatever core percentage they need for a lot of lists. And then they can just take like whatever the heck they want. And like, I get a lot of people like that and they think it's cool, but like that just too much sense of like lack of structure and openness, it can kind of create some really cheesy situations. And I remember a big reason I didn't like the new 40k is because I went up against like a Tau player and like he had just full like those battle suit, like giant Gundam suit things, like they're huge, and the entire army just was that and some like little shield drones, and they don't even deploy, they just deep strike on the board wherever they want and just do whatever they want. And I'm just like, what is this game I'm playing right now? Like, I'm sorry, I just don't really find this fun. I'm sure a bit of it was the army the guy took, and like I was probably just being a bit sour about everything, but like, yeah, that was kind of when I was like, this game has no structure, I'm sorry. And yeah, at that point, like, you're not even really playing a game. It's literally just like, all right, I'm going to buy all this stuff and just throw it on there because it's, like, uber good. And that's why I kind of like the older editions. Like, yeah, you could say 8th edition really encouraged, like, heavy units, but there was, at least when I played it, like, a pretty good sense of structure when it came to making an army. I never really did like I know End Times put in like 50% character thing, but I never really played with that. So yeah, I did like 25% Lord, 25% Heroes for all the games that I've played over the past 10, 12 years. And I think that gave a little bit more of a sense of structure to things. And yeah, that's why I kind of put this in the concern area. And yeah, on the note of that, I just think the overall 50% allotment for characters is very encouraging towards, as it's known, Hero Hammer. And there's not really anything wrong with that, which is why I put that in this category here. Hero Hammer can be a lot of fun, and like having like cool characters and being able to fit a bunch of little characters into all your units like gives them a lot of flavor, personality. I used to love that stuff. So I'm not like saying that's a bad thing per se. I'm just trying to say, like, again, like when there's that allowance for just like, for me, it's like taking a super Bretonnian guy on a hippogriff and giving him a healing potion and a whatever it's called, bedazzling helm, and all a heroic killing blow, and like all these other crazy things, and like I can take them in pretty much every list, like unless it's less than, I don't know, like 750 points or something. Like it does kind of raise a little bit of concern in my eyes for like the era of Hero Hammer that could be coming forward here. Also, magic, kind of just the way it works, I'll talk about that in a little bit, but like, yeah, you can take so many wizards and you're not capped on like your magic resource pool, at least from what I can gather. So it's like, if I have 8 wizards and they all have like their own little spells, like I can cast all of those every single turn. And with the percentages that it's at, like, that's very feasible, like, for some armies. Like, I don't know. That's why I kind of say I put this in my not sure area. I like the heroes, I like the character and flavor it can give to armies, but I also think it could lead to some problem areas further down the line. The morale system, overall, I am really not sure how to feel about it. Just as I wrote here, sometimes I gotta be honest, I kind of think it's terrible. Other times I am like, oh, what was I thinking? I actually think this is perfectly fine. And what I mean by that is, it's great to, like, you'll have to forgive me, it's a little hard to put this all in one string of thoughts, but sometimes it's great in the sense that combat could be a little bit too punishing in older editions of Warhammer. My opponent has taken big units of Chaos Warriors, and I've charged them with Bretonnian Knights that just have all these little things to stack the combat res in my favor, and yeah, it sometimes kind of sucked when, like, it would not go in the Warriors of Chaos favor in the days of old. And the whole unit would break, and then I would run them down and kill them, and a lot of them really didn't get a chance to shine, and you could say it was a bit of a waste of points. So it, like, is better in that sense that, like, stuff like that isn't happening quite as frequently. But it also is not better because there is really no conversation for the most part in a lot of battles in that sense of, like, battle, like, res and combat morale, like, weighing things out, because 90% of the time my opponent's just going to be rolling 2 dice against his leadership unmodified, and if he gets that roll, he's just going to fall back a little bit, and I'm going to pursue him. And either I'll get the pursuit or I won't. And, like, yeah, that could change things a little bit. But, yeah, I just don't really think that's too much more of a sophisticated thing. It's basically, okay, I charge you, I smash your front rank, you fall back a bit, I charge forward, and we repeat that process. Now, it does open a whole lot of conversations because my opponent or myself could have other units in this little theater of theoretical battle on the flanks, and now they can get involved into the combat, right? So I get that it creates a little bit more tactical dynamic in that sense. Also, just in the sense that the lines of battle are physically shifting on the battlefield. Like, I think that's cool. But what it also means is, like, all that stuff I talked about earlier, like, just to give an example, right? My Bretonnian Knights are charging in. Oh, I've got 2 ranks, I've got that banner, I've got my BSB, I've got my Vow, and then I killed 4 Chaos Knights, and I got like 8 or 9 things all working in my favor. I only lost 1 Knight, so I got 8 things working in my favor, right, for the combat res. And yeah, the Chaos are gonna fail that unless they get, like, a really, really good insane courage roll. Maybe they got a BSB, so they got a second chance at it, right? I get that that's, like, really brutal, but, like, it's the polar opposite of that now, where it's just like, all right, like, just roll 2 dice, you either pass or you don't, and if you don't, like, the same thing I was talking about earlier is going to happen, where you just run away and I'm going to run you down, right? But at least in the games I played, like, I understand some armies don't have a super high unmodified leadership, but, like, in a lot of the games I played, like, that's just what's happening, is he fails the leadership, he moves back a bit, I continue my pursuit and just keep charging in over and over until the game ends, basically, or the unit's wiped out. And yeah, I like, just, I don't really know if I think that's better or worse, which is why I put that here. I am really unsure on, like, that combat system. It feels like a couple of step backs, if I'm being honest, and maybe 1 step forward in the sense that, like, the line's moving and the combat lasting a bit longer does offer some kind of tactical incentives for flanking and stuff. Like, I just, overall, am really unsure on that one. It did not wow me. I'll put it to you that way. I will say, though, like, when you're fighting undead and they crumble based on, like, how much they lost by, like, then I'm like, oh, okay, like, yeah, everything feels, like, normal, and, like, this is, like, typical combat res and stuff, like, but, again, it's just, like, that's only, like, 5% of the time, or when you're fighting demons, because I think they all have, like, an unstable thing where they crumble as well, like, when I was fighting that demon prince, so, yeah, it's, like, those little, like, 5 to 10% scenarios, maybe more for you, based on your opponent, like, are the only times where it's like, all right, like, it really feels favorable for me to stack these combat reses in my favor. because otherwise, like, I'm just gonna be rolling 2d6 at lead 9 or something like that. Like, again, I know a lot of armies don't have, like, that level of leadership. Bretonnians have pretty high leadership, but, like, yeah, a lot of times I'm just rolling at that, or if I'm Warriors of Chaos, I'm just rolling at that, or an 8, and most of the time you're going to pass that. So, yeah, I was just a little bit concerned about that one. I didn't really get a chance to play against it, and that's why I'm putting it in the not sure category here, but none of the games I played, people were switching their stances up too much. Like, I know there's a marching stance that lets you move basically twice as fast, or maybe it's like 3 times as fast or something. Like, and a lot of people were talking about, like, being able to kind of cheese that so you can get, like, units across the board on turn 1, but I assume you won't be able to charge. Well, I know you can't charge in that, so you have to, like, change formation, and then, like, you know, it's kind of like chess. You won't be able to act right away. Your opponent's going to be able to act on that, and then you get to, like, do the counterplay. So I don't know if that's, like, inherently broken or anything like that. I just put the whole marching stance and stances in general kind of in this not sure area, because aside from some of the stuff I talked about with combat res, which is more being close order or like loose order and all that stuff, I really didn't get a chance to do too much with stances, and I just seen some stuff online that makes me a little bit hesitant about it, so I'm going to put that in the not sure category as well here. The final thing I'm not too sure on is the magic system. If you watched my video on, like, all the news we had about Warhammer the Old World so far, you'll know I wasn't really too sure about it back then. But yeah, I played it now, and I'm still not really too sure about it. It is definitely a lot simpler, but it's not so much so that, like, I hate it per se. I really liked the older editions of Warhammer's magic system. 8th edition's magic system, I like 6th edition and 7th edition's magic system. I like the bidding of dice, the allocation of your magic resources, basically, the kind of gambling and, like, poker face game you're playing with your opponent on how many dice you're going to allocate towards something, and I really liked all that stuff, and, like, that's kind of all gone now. Instead, it's just, I'm going to be casting everything I can every single turn, and yeah, you're going to try and dispel it if you can. And if you don't have a wizard, you're going to pick my one nastiest spell, most likely, and try to dispel that one with, like, your desperate dispel you can make or whatever. So yeah, I definitely think it's a lot less sophisticated, number one. The dispel range and, like, all that stuff, I think that is cool. I like it as a mechanic, and I like that everything's shorter range to kind of encourage tactical play around that. So that's a positive, but again, like, it just doesn't feel like it's as sophisticated overall as, like, what we got in past editions. Even the way, like, the signatures and stuff work now, like, yeah, and, like, everyone having, like, their own little lore thing. It's cool. I like that everyone's got their own little thing now, but it just doesn't really feel like it offers as much depth as, like, what we got before, in my opinion. Like, everyone, like, the lores are basically cut in half for a lot of people. I think it's cool how some of those cut spells have been put into the standard lore stuff. Like, there's some actually, like, cool Warhammer lore within spell lore stuff going on there. But yeah, it does feel like a lot of stuff is a couple steps back overall. And there are a couple of steps forward with dispel range and having, like, certain level wizards positioned in certain areas, things being just shorter range overall for positioning mattering even more. Like, I'd give it a step or two forward, but again, it just feels like 2 or 3 back. So I don't really know if we're making any progress or if overall we're just kind of taking a little step back. I've never been a huge Magic guy. I used to be when I was a kid, but, like, it's not a change that's a deal breaker for me per se. And that's why I'm just kind of putting this in the not sure category for now. I'm also putting it here because, as I mentioned in the character hero hammer part earlier, like, it just seems like with no allocation of actual magic resources, just like the number of spells you have is the number of spells you're going to cast. Like, yeah, I feel like that encourages a lot of magic spam. And if you don't have a wizard or something to, like, counter that, like, it could get pretty nasty. I know a lot of spells just overall are toned back, but it just seems like it could be a little bit of a dangerous area for the future of the game. And I'm a little bit concerned about it. Speaking of which, we are going to move to the actual concerns. Yes, that's right. The real kind of things that I'm like, I don't know. That does make me a little bit worried about the future of the game. And there aren't that many. So, again, I really do mean it when I say overall, I feel like this has been a pretty positive experience I've had with Warhammer the Old World so far. But, yeah, my concerns are to make an ode to Dr. Luke Blacksoul and his Warhammer channel. I'll put a link up here. Absolutely awesome channel. I've been following him way before the Old World. One of my buddies is like a devout Chaos player, and he loves listening to whatever this guy's got to say about Warriors of Chaos, and I definitely listen to all of his stuff on Bretonnians. He's got some great videos. Again, I'll put the link up here. Definitely check him out. But he's brought up some keen observations about the way supporting attacks work in this edition. There's no step up, but there's really no cap on how many guys on the sides you can have contributing to battles, and yeah, as he puts it so lovingly, line hammer. I can definitely see this being a bit of a problem, seeing that it has no cap, and don't really understand that one. A lot of people are like, oh, well, you're going to have these huge flanks exposed and this and that, and you can play terrain to this way, but I'm sorry, like, a lot of these are, like, conditional things, and, like, this is just, like, a core of the game, as far as I'm concerned, mechanic problem, and it should be addressed. I understand some people are like, oh, well, no, it's, like, this sense of enveloping, and, like, a unit enclosing on you, and this and that, but, like, that needs to be implemented in a different way. I'm sorry. Or you need to have some kind of cap, or just say, like, I don't know, like, you get 2 times the amount the opponent has in the front rank. So if they're 5, the max you can get is 10 involved in a combat, because what they have now is a little bit silly, in my opinion. So, and again, I'm going to put a link to his video as well that talks about this specifically here, because I don't want to be just stealing his content or anything, but I do think there are some actual precedents for maybe changing some of the mechanics for the game, or at least setting some limits maybe to how big these units can get. One of the players in the league pointed it out to me, the Chaos player, and he said, I think when you get charged in the flank and you have no ability to reform and face your opponent, that is a little bit too brutal. I read through the rules, and I would like to think there's something in there that I missed, and I remember reading through some of the online Facebook groups and thinking maybe someone on there's been talking about it, and it does seem like there's no way to reform. Again, I'm very early on in this game, could have missed something, but yeah, I know also me saying this is a little bit hypocritical, considering I was just bashing on how, you know, the supporting attack, infinite cap, long lines is a little cheesy. While these flank attacks are a great way to counter that. I think that part's great, but I think when people are playing the game kind of standard and you get charged in the flank and there's no way to, like, reposition, I don't know. It's a little too brutal, in my opinion, and it basically just means if you get charged in the flank, like, you're dead. Unless the unit charging you is really, really bad stat-wise and you're, like, vastly superior. It seems like it's a death sentence every single time it's going to happen. Again, personally, I'm a little bit unsure on this one, but most of my community members seem to think that that was just way too brutal, and I can understand where they're coming from. The final thing I want to say is this is coming from someone who is using them in a lot of the games I talked about. Skirmishers seem a little bit broken in this edition. The fact that they can just be so loosely positioned, the fact that they get to charge 360 or shoot 360, like, pretty much haphazardly, however they want, that is not okay, in my opinion. I'm sorry, like, again, like, this just seems like it is going to encourage some heavy cheese in the game. Like, I to be honest too, like, I really want to play like a Royal Air Force for Bretonnians, and like Pegasus Knights just seem like so strong, and I know there's some stuff to combat flying units specifically and like what I'm taking to the table, but it's not just flying skirmishers, it's just skirmishers in general. I think it needs to be fixed. You need to have a front arc, and you need to position it in some manner. You need to say, like, or just have, like, someone that represents at least the front arc that the unit has at that time, because the 360 nature of it is way too loose. I can position this unit that moves so fast anywhere and just avoid so much confrontation and just get charges and do whatever I want, basically. It is just way too powerful. And again, like, I am very early on playing this game. Maybe I'm going to see some really good counterplay over my next couple of games that'll make me think otherwise. But right now, it just seems way too strong. And something needs to be done to address the way skirmishers work in the game. I also asked everyone after the battles we played what their thoughts were on the game so far, and I'm going to put a little compilation of all my community's thoughts on the game. I know this video is already getting close or going over an hour, so I don't want to spend another 20-30 minutes breaking down all of my community's thoughts. I'll just leave that up for you here, and you can feel free to pause and read it if you wish. But again, overall, I really like what I played this weekend, and I plan on doing more videos on Warhammer the Old World content, and I plan on playing this game quite a bit more. So I think the future is looking bright for this game. I can't wait to see other armies get their own little rule books and arcane journals and see what's inside of those. My buddy plays orcs and goblins, and I think that's the next army to be announced, and he's already looking forward to getting one of the old school giants, I think. I want to get the old school trolls. Those are like my favorite trolls, and I can't wait to get those. And yeah, just see how the army plays out in the new edition. I already did get a little bit of a taste of them, like, because they have their rules in the Ravening Hordes book, but I know they'll get expanded on whenever they get their time to shine with Games Workshop, and all the armies, other armies will as well. So really looking forward to that, and looking forward to the future of this game and making content for it. So on that note, I am just about done, and looking forward to giving you some more content soon, folks. Have a good day, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.